true that a lot of developers are today coming in, clear cutting, and I see it more than I've ever seen it before. And so I think by that partnership will help our city tremendously. And I would like for you to reach out to Union City. And the reason why I say that is because Union City has developed a lot of warehouses. And so a lot of trees are being cut down. And those trees do help with particulate matter. And we do have environmental issues because of that. And so us doing it and them doing it, we would really help each other. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for those comments. It really is important that, we are thoughtful about the impacts of tree loss. There's been a lot of articles about heat island effect and hot zone for certain communities and the relationships between particulate matters. The heat in general is the #1 natural killer of people in the United States. People pay attention to floods or tornadoes, but in actuality, every year more people die of heat. And so trees are an excellent way to offset that. And that, when the ordinance allows massive removal of trees without consideration for preserving that canopy, there are health and other economic ramifications that somebody else has to take care of.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Gilliard. Councilwoman Rowell.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Judy, for a thorough presentation. As you know, I reached out to you to learn more about the work you were doing with cities in the metro area and got very excited about the potential for our city to partner. So I'm very excited to hear that my colleagues on council are equally as excited about protecting our tree canopy. One of the things that Councilwoman Willis mentioned that I also think we have to look at is the fact that preservation of the existing trees and maintenance is a major issue. So I've also asked for Trees Atlanta to look at our existing ordinance to make sure we're doing best practices and to see if maybe that tree bank fund can deal with some of the maintenance, because we do have issues about trees, especially in our right of way and our parks. And so there may be an opportunity to address that. And there is a resolution forthcoming that I've requested to be on the agenda at our next regularly scheduled meeting in support of this. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rowell. Ms. Jones? Ms. Jones.
Mr. Mayor, City Manager Jones was knocked off a line. She's logging back in right now.
Okay. Where's Mr. Toms?
I'm available. Can you hear me, Mayor?
I hear you. A couple of things I would request and information that be given to all my colleagues. One is Ms. Judy. I really appreciate what you're doing about trees. In another life, I used to the trees along South Fulton Parkway in the middle aisles. I planted every one of them, so I know what they can do. But here's what I would like, Mr. Tom, you and Ms. Jones, send my colleagues a copy of our tree recompense policy. Okay, and also to add to that, send them a copy of what's in the tree bank as of right now and what it can and cannot be used for. I think that would be helpful to all of us as we talk about this in the future. Okay.
Let me be clear, Mayor. You want me to send you?
No. I told him to send me.
Okay, good. Okay.
Our recompense program. You got that, Mr. Toms?
Yes, sir. I'm going to send that out to all the
council. Send a copy of the recompense program, and then send a copy of the tree bank, what's in it, what's available, and what it can be used for. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And once again, thank you, Judy. We really appreciate you, and hopefully we can get involved more with this Trees Atlanta project.
So much for the time.
Okay. Mr. Clerk?
Yes, sir. The next item is the records management legislation and plan. And this will be presented by myself and the city clerk's office.
Well, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor and City Council, it is my pleasure to present to you the records management plan for the city of South Fulton. This has been a ongoing task that members of the city manager and clerk's office have been working on for some years. And as a new city, we are excited to begin to put in place the infrastructure to record our documents and electronically store them as opposed to having a lot of paper documents. Myself, along with my deputy city clerk, Renardo Pascal, who has done a majority of this work prior to this year, have put together a plan that we will present today. We have a brief PowerPoint presentation for you today to go over the basics of records management. I also would like to point out that Neymar Strickland, the Information Technology Director, has been working hand in hand with us in terms of how to efficiently and technologically do this in the best manner. And then lastly, I would like you to know that Mrs. Renee Keener with the American Document Securities, also known as ADS, is also on the Zoom today as a resource. Today, we are not asking for any action. We just want to present the plan and the background information. And it is our hope that at the next regular meeting, you will be able to consider the resolution for approval. So with that, I would like to introduce Deputy City Clerk Renardo Pascal, who is our records management guru, and he will take it from here. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the introduction, Mr. Adams. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I bring before you a brief presentation. We will call this today's class Records Management 101. Just kind of give everyone a brief high-level overview of records management and governmental operations and what it takes to kind of ensure that we are not only compliant, but also successful in our daily business interactions. Can you go to the next slide for me, please? All right, so what is a record? A record is any document, be it paper or electronic. It could be something that you write on a napkin or maybe a simple Post-it. If that item is created and it has been used for the purpose of any type of city business, that now becomes a record. So it can take a number of different forms. Next slide, please. All right. Those records can be used for a number of items such as litigation, any actions that the city has made. It could be in the form of receipts or even any daily decision actions that may be made by council or our departments or city leadership. One of the things that is most important for us is to know that there are some records that are historic, and those records are permanent in nature. And primarily, those are some of the items that we really want to focus on making sure that we not only preserve, but we also do an excellent job on managing the life cycle of those documents. And so if you look at many of them, they have about a 95% rate of being disposed after they've been applied the appropriate retention. So that's something that we want to keep into consideration and make sure that they are not only scheduled by established retention, but also that we're maintaining them to ensure that they're compliant. We're not keeping items longer than their life cycle. Next slide, please. All right, so the records management team, as Mr. Adams pointed out in the introduction, is comprised of the city clerk's office, and primarily at the moment, IT. And so one of the things that we're trying to do is get up to speed with things that are happening in real time. And so historically, records have been known to be kept by paper or some form of physical document. And so what we're trying to do is put ourselves in a position where records are easily accessible and manageable. And real time. So what we're looking to do is convert a lot of our old, in this case, we're in the city. So we do have some paper documents, but we want to implement an electronic format, which will not only facilitate ease of production of documents, but also when it comes to the management and upkeep of those documents. Some other key players that will be a part of the team are your records administrator and your department heads and coordinators. The records administrator's primary role is to ensure that we're complying with any and all state mandates and requirements that are issued under the Georgia Records Act. Your department heads will be also key players in this role, ensuring that not only are their staff knowledgeable, but they're also fully aware of the needs and requirements to ensure that their records are maintained and kept as they are outlined under the retention schedule. Next slide, please. All right, this is just a continuation of kind of what's expected of our department heads and records coordinators. So essentially, the department head will be your key figure who is ultimately the custodian of their records. So they'll need to put in place any policy or any procedure that's specific to their department and daily business operations. And so your coordinators will primarily carry out the workload that is implemented under those procedures and policy to ensure that staff, the department, and all other stakeholders are fully aware and are able to share information that may be needed or requested, be it an open record, or you may have public inquiry where there's a business operation that may be required to pull certain records and documents. Next slide, please. All right. So each department, this is our records management network. What we are looking to do is to establish an internal network that we can leverage across the board, which will be key in our electronic conversion, where there may be similar applications to some of our records. And what we want to do is create a network where we can easily access certain documents that may be valuable or may be needed in our daily business interactions. And to do so, we need to inventory the records that we have and ensure that they are not only compliant to the listed record schedule, but also that they adhere to whatever departmental procedures, regulations that are in place that will help facilitate our daily business interactions and needs as it comes to our city records. All right, next slide, please. You can go to the next slide. All right, so the life cycle of a record. So there are 4 main areas when we're looking at our documents. One is creation. So whatever that document is in its nature, we have to look at that and make sure it's applied in terms of retention. So labeling, indexing, and things of that nature, so we will know what the purpose of that document is and how to apply any needed retention, which takes us into our next item, which is the use. What are we using those documents for, and how are they benefiting not only the city, but the residents and the general public of the city? The third step is the maintenance of those items. How are they being applied in terms of retention? Are there items that we're keeping permanently? Are we storing them, or are we kind of making them active items, or are they inactive items? So paying attention to the third step is one of the key things when it comes to applying the retention schedule to any and all of our documents to ensure compliance by state guidelines. And lastly, disposition, which is key. Documents that have reached retention will need to be properly disposed of or archived, if you will, depending on which nature that the city decides to go. Primarily, we do have some things in place now where we are shredding documents that are deemed non-essential or they have reached their life cycle. And so what we want to make sure is that we are not keeping records that can be properly and legally disposed of once they have hit retention. That not only saves on space, but it also improves cost because records take up space. There are also other legal implications that may be applied to certain documents that are kept beyond their life cycle. Next slide, please. And this is just an overview of the state local government retention schedule. And it kind of goes from A to Z as far as each department and what's expected of those documents that are common in all governmental agencies. Next slide, please. And these are just some quick links that I think you guys should have the presentation if you just wanted to get some additional information that applies to our records management initiative. Next. All right. Well, I thank you guys for taking the time. This will conclude our presentation. And again, as Mr. Adams mentioned earlier, we do have Ms. Renee Keener, who we are leaning on to help us with some of our project goals and initiatives. So if you have any questions, I'm open to taking them right now. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. I want to also mention that we do have proposed legislation that we would like to present later on in the month, and that's pretty much going to go over what our records management plan is and lay out the outline as far as what expectations are for our staff and department heads. And essentially what it will do, we will adopt the state's retention schedule. So we've laid out a plan and policy for that defines what is needed of staff, specifically department heads, the record administrator, and other key stakeholders as far as daily operations and how that plan will be implemented. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Renato.
Okay. But I also wanted to, before I conclude, I want to acknowledge Mayor Pro Tem Willis. She's been working with me essentially since I've gotten to the city on getting this plan implemented and laid out. So she's been instrumental in providing insights and kind of some back end information on what we'll need as a city to roll this and lift this plan up and get it rolling for the city of South Fulton.
Okay. Mr. Pascal?
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you one question before I get to my colleagues here. I know some time ago, governments used to use what is called off-site record management. Is it now replaced with what is called at the cloud as opposed to off-site record management?
So there's I would call it more of a hybrid. So that still exists. And actually, I'm glad you asked that as we have Ms. Keener on the line. So we're looking to do a hybrid model where we utilize some off-site services primarily for our storage purpose. But also internally, we're looking to implement that cloud-based records management program to help alleviate our dependence on paper, but also improve efficiency by digitizing and making those documents readily available in real time electronically.
Last question, have you all decided how much of that information will be maintained off-site, or will most of it be maintained in what they call the cloud?
So right now, we're in the research phase, but what the plan is to focus on our permanent and historical records by storing them off-site. Hopefully in the future, when we have a permanent location, we can focus our efforts on having an internal storage facility. But as of right now, we're looking to leverage off-site storage for our permanent record documents.
Okay, thank you very much. I have in the queue, I have Ms. Willis, Ms. Gums, Mr. Khalid, and Ms. Rowell in that order. So Ms. Willis, you have the floor.
I just want to thank Mr. Adams and Mr. Pascal on their due diligence in bringing this finally to fruition. Mr. Pascal is correct. We have been working on this matter since probably the inception of getting dinged on an audit on certain record retention matters consistently. And we finally are here at this point. Off-site record management, Mayor, I'm glad you mentioned that, but it's becoming rather obsolete. because as Mr. Pesco has stated, most people are moving towards storing things in a more of a cloud fashion. I mean, there are some records that you can't get rid of that are paper, but it's an additional cost that I will hope with this new technology and with the way that we're moving, that will allow us to look at more of the technology piece. This ordinance will come on this agenda probably the next council meeting. I have been looking at the draft with Mr. Pascal, and if it has not been sent through the legislative agenda, I think something has been sent through the legislative agenda. If not, we will send the updated ordinance. It does come with a price tag. Technology does cost, but I just think it's well worth it. Number one, it keeps us out of trouble from our operation side as far as audits. And then also, it would just help us be more efficient when maintaining the necessary documents our city needs to have maintained. So I will hope that our colleagues will take time to read through this ordinance. It is a lengthy ordinance in its entirety. And if you have any questions, please reach out to the clerk office. If you have any questions of me from the policy side, please reach out to me. So we won't have this long, lengthy, drawn out conversation about what we need in order to maintain or get our clerk office up to standard. Thank you.
May I proceed?
Mayor, are you there? Mr. Adams, who's in the queue? Mr. Adams.
Councilmember Gomes is next in the queue.
Is there anybody else behind Ms. Gomes? I just want to know the lineup in case the mayor doesn't come back.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yes, after Councilmember Gomes is Councilmember Rowell.
Okay. I will.
Two other people. I'm back.
Recognize Councilwoman. Okay, thank you.
There's two other people after Ms. Gomes is Khalid and Ms. Rowell. Go ahead, Ms. Gomes.
First, I do want to thank you, Councilwoman Willis, and the clerk's department, because it's something that we definitely need to see. I think the mayor and the councilwoman hit on a few issues. One of my questions is the price tag. And will there be one person, or will the entire department be trained on this? And then also too, I think the main thing is how it's going to streamline the work that you all do in the clerk's office, because I do love the fact that it is going to be, I don't know if it's going to be in the cloud, but some way that it is streamlined and digitized. So I think that is very important as we're moving into a progressive city. So I do like that. But do you have an estimate on the price tag at least?
Yes, Councilmember Gomes, before I let Mr. Pascal address that more directly, I would just like to say that at this point, we have received some preliminary numbers.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to caution us that they're not at a point where we're prepared to present the vehicle to achieve the price tag, as well as when that will happen. But we do have some preliminary numbers based on some figures provided by our outside vendor. Mr. Pascal, can you address that, please?
Yeah, sure.
Be done in phases. I think that'll also, I know we did it with OpenGov where we had to have it done in phases. Do you all foresee the same thing?
Absolutely. So that's actually a part of the plan to offset costs. As Mr. Adams and Mayor Pro Tem Willis has noted, the technology is costly. And so what we're looking to do is kind of do a 3 to 5 step program, or phased in approach as far as implementation. So there's not such a big cost up front as far as what we're trying to do. And it's evenly spread out over a number of years as we roll out the project. But initially, to get started, we're estimating, based on some of the numbers that we've seen thus far, about $165,000 to get us started, which will include storage, some digitization projects, and then also some additional assessments in terms of how we want to create our digital format in terms of getting those records back and forth and working with the department in terms of phasing in our digital documents and records. And we've been working kind of hand in hand with IT on that to figure out what's the best solution, because we do have things already in-house, but the first step is converting our documents and records, which we will need to do first, and kind of phasing those items into existing technology and resources that we have already implemented throughout the city. And to your other point, the plan itself, the good thing is that we're already operating within the plan. I'll just use our open record operations as an example. And so each department has a more or less a coordinator that handles their open records. And so what we're looking to do to offset any additional staffing costs at this moment is to leverage that option, because these staff members are already familiar with the records and documents. And so they're basically already doing what the plan attempts to lay out. The only thing that we're adding is some more teeth to the program and some additional requirements in terms of what's needed to ensure we're compliant under the Georgia Records Act.
Understood. And I think that's pretty reasonable. And my last question, so with the Open Records Act, you just mentioned that, again, what's the plan to, I guess, maybe there's certain records that can't be provided. How will you all be handling that piece of it? I may have missed it. I'm sorry.
So that's not necessarily a part of this. I mean, we're already operating by state guidelines in terms of open records. There are certain records that are not releasable, and the state provides a guideline of that as well. And usually that's covered in open record training, which each of those coordinators for each department has gotten. But I'm actually glad you asked that, because that's outlined as well in our plan as far as what those expectations are and what the responsibilities are to the coordinators and department heads, or custodial departments, if you will, as is outlined in the legislation. But there are parameters that are put in place to give each of those individuals a guideline of what the expectation and requirement is.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Before I go to Ms. Rowell, Ms. Gumbs, in part of her conversation, she mentioned Mr. Pascal cross training, and I think that's very important, not only to this especially, but to a lot of areas in our city. So you didn't actually address it, but tell us about what's the cross training efforts going to be on this project.
So the beauty in cross training, and quite frankly, that helps us overall. So we never miss a step. So if somebody is out or unable, as you all know, I'm just going to use open records as an example again, that's inexcusable to say, hey, this person was out, so we couldn't fulfill what the request was. So with cross training, you have multiple people that are able to carry out a specific task or duty that may be requested, be it internally or externally, whatever the case may be. But also cross functionality improves our efficiency across the board. So it exposes staff to a number of different, not only educational aspects, but they're fully aware of city operations. So I'll use just CDRA as an example, which is one of our largest operating departments. There are a number of different areas where staff, it would benefit staff to be cross-trained, be it from your permitting division or your code enforcement or building inspections, things of that nature. They all hold records and documents that are, they essentially feed off each other. So you can't have one without the other. And then being able to decipher and have access to those documents and records, be it for a internal operation or a simple permit request that came in by open records, having staff cross-trained in those areas and knowing what to look for and what's releasable versus what's not, that's key in terms of this training. And so those are some of the things that are provided when we assign staff certain roles and responsibilities.
Okay, we'll close with Dr. Rowell.
Thank you, Mayor, for recognizing me. Thank you, Councilwoman Willis. As you know, has been stated, this is something we've been working on or needing for some time. And one of the things that I wanted to inquire about was whether the city's land records, which need to be perpetually maintained, are included in this project. I recall that there are a number of those land record files that are still being stored from the county. Will we be able to digitize those, or what is the plan for that?
So those plans are not included in this phase of the project. There's still some legwork and I'll say meetings that need to be held to figure out what we have. That's something that we've been trying to collaborate on the back end to figure out what's needed and required. It's my thought process when we are able to address that inquiry, that those records the ones that are available would be able to be digitized. But primarily a lot of those documents are permanent. So our offsite solution, it is our hope that will be our, until we have a permanent location, that will be our solution to handle and address those things. But I want to defer to Mr. Strickland, and he can kind of give some more insight on what we're doing with that end of the project.
Thank you. Mr. Strickland.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Neymar Strickland. We are looking at, in parallel, we're working on the process for identity, but ultimately what we're doing is, this is the foundation of what we're going to have to do anyway to kind of accept those records. And the biggest issue we have currently with the current records at the county is if we do receive them all, somewhere to put them. So this is a foundational step for getting that process. But we are working in parallel with working on identifying and receiving the records that we that belong to us.
A follow-up question, and this may be, I don't know if this is Mr. Strickland or the city manager. As I think about how the city has had to navigate during the pandemic, and the reality is that we've had times where staff worked remotely from home, and with the rise in COVID, we may find ourselves there again. I would hope that we would explore or look at that ARA money as a possible source of funding to potentially help us with making sure that we can continue to operate optimally as a city. And so, I know we've been talking about some of these for some time, those records in particular. So just want to encourage us to look at all options available, because while it sounds hefty, 150,000, even for this first phase, doesn't seem expensive to me. Having worked on projects similar, to get us where we need to be, I think it's not unreasonable. So again, just exploring all options so that we can move forward.
Yes, ma'am. We are considering some technology infrastructure upgrades as far as our city operations and services in regards to use of the American Rescue Plan money.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Rowell. Mr. Clerk, next item, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. The next item is the monthly reports. The first one is the Finance Monthly Report. That will be presented by Rachel Bembry, the Interim Finance Director.
Ms. Bembry, go right ahead.
Right. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. For the financial report this afternoon, I'll provide a brief summary of our year-to-date financials, as well as an update on the fiscal year 22 budget process. So if you'll go to the next page, please. So in summary, for your year-to-date financials as of June 30th, you'll see our revenues are pacing at or above anticipated levels, with approximately 96% of our revenue budget collected to date. Some key items worth noting is that we are pacing ahead of schedule in our motor vehicle revenue, multiple of our franchise tax revenue lines, and charges for services. Specifically in charges for services, the bulk of that is related to your traffic camera revenue. And through June, we have collected about $3.8 million in your traffic camera revenue. Additionally, you'll see expenditures there, but if you'll flip to the next page, we can look at them in a little bigger view. This will show your expenditures and how they're tracking year to date. So you'll see we're at about 50% of budgeted levels, but it is important to note that some of the expenditure allocations, for example, fuel and postage, as well as some annual transfer amounts that typically occur at year end, those items will not have been booked yet. So you will still see some fluctuations in these budgets as we approach year end to get us closer to that projected budget level. So if you'll go to the next page also, please, this is an additional item that we've provided in this June report as an expanded table in response to some of the questions that we've been receiving. And this table just simply presents the various cash balances as of June 30th, 2021. So that concludes the financial reports. I would like to go on and give an update on the fiscal year 22 budget and another finance matter, and then open the floor for any questions. So moving on, as an update to our the status of the fiscal year 22 budget, management has met with finance and the department heads to make some difficult decisions to prepare a balanced proposed budget for mayor and council. We are diligently working to provide this proposed budget to mayor and council along with the transmittal letter by the end of this week. I look forward to receiving your questions and concerns once everyone's had a chance to review the proposed budget. As a reminder, department presentations are scheduled for August 17th and August 19th. And also, it's important to note that we have public hearings for the millage rate to support this proposed budget. And those will be held, two will be held tomorrow, August 11th. At 10 a.m. and at 6 p.m. and a final third hearing on August 24th at 6 p.m. Finally, real quick, I want to give just a little prelude to the public hearings tomorrow with some of the comments that I've received or heard regarding the millage rate. I want to reiterate, that management is recommending a millage rate of 12.899. This is the same millage rate for 2021 that there was for 2020. The millage rate is not changing. The amount the city charges for property taxes on the individual homeowner is not changing. The millage rate, this is the same year as same being recommended this year as it was last year. I understand some advertisements that are legally required to be presented the way they are tend to cause confusion, and that the ad reflected a 6.2% increase. I want to make clear that this increase is due solely to the revaluation of real property. In other words, some property values increased from last year to this year. If the value of a home did not change, then neither will the property taxes due at the recommended rate. For example, $175,000 home in this 2021 digest at the recommended rate is going to pay the same amount of property taxes as the $175,000 home in last year's digest. So I just wanted to clarify, we'll elaborate a little bit more before the public hearing tomorrow, but I just wanted to make sure and thought it would be prudent to share those comments. So that's really kind of all my housekeeping for this financial report. So I'd like to open the floor for any questions either on the year-to-date financials or on the status of the fiscal year 22 budget report, and I'll take those down and respond as I'm able.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I just want to tell my colleagues that I guess we answered our question as far as the tree fund was. I thought there was a healthy balance over in there. If you all saw it real fast, it went on the screen. At this time, and thank you once again for clearing up the whole perception and concept of what was happening on the tax increases. That was very much needed. Mr. Khalid.
You're muted, sir. Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. I echo the mayor's sentiments for clearing up the confusion. I think we all have probably been putting out fires individually of residents calling us. I do think it is also just important to remind residents, and I will say this often, that as we do the work of the city, property values will increase, which allows us to provide all of the services that you are demanding, right? So we can't keep providing more and more services with the same amount of money, but as property values increase, we will have more tax revenues, and hopefully some of those will be commercial as well. Ms. Bembry, your department, not your department presentations, but do we have the times for the department presentations on August 17th and 19th?
I will defer to city management, but as of to discussions this morning, I do believe that we are still ironing out some of those schedules. Ms. Jones, do you have any?
Yes, thank you. Those presentations will begin at 10 a.m. If I'm not mistaken, we should have sent calendar invites to you. If you haven't gotten that, we'll make sure we send it to you, but those are scheduled for Tuesday, August the 17th, and Thursday, August the 19th at 10 a.m., and they will be held virtually.
Okay. And do we have budget hearing dates for the 3 required budget hearings?
We have not. Go ahead, Rachel.
I was going to say the same thing. We have not scheduled those at this date, but those will be forthcoming very soon.
Yes, and that information, we should have it all finalized hopefully by the end of the week when you receive your proposed budget for fiscal year 22. And again, I want to reiterate what Rachel said. I will be presenting to you from the city manager's office a balanced budget.
Okay, and then lastly, and I'm sure we'll be talking about this again, but I have seen letters about a $2 million budget shortfall and cuts that we might have to make from that. And I asked this question over email and I didn't get an answer, but hearing today that we are 90% or more ahead of collections, and we've received this $5.5 million of ARP money this year and another $5.5 million next year. We've got nearly $4 million in unanticipated speed camera revenues. I know Fincher Denmark found like $500,000 or more than $500,000 in franchise fees. I'm just wondering how are we ending up with a shortfall? Are we just planning a significantly larger budget this year than last year?
A couple of items. First, I think it's important to note that we do not want to, just in theory, you never want to balance a operating budget with a one-time revenue. So, when we talk about the ARP funds, those are funds that are available over the 4 years to be spent on city initiatives. But we do not necessarily want to utilize those funds to balance an operating budget. So with that being said, let me address the operating budget shortfall. The budget process is kind of a fluid, very dynamic and ongoing process in that, we start this process back in March and we do revenue projections and personnel projections, and the department heads submit department requests. And they say, this is what we are requesting to operate at this service level. And these are the capital and the personnel that, would be required to provide this service level. And then we go to the drawing board and we work with management and we meet with departments, and it's really a balancing act because you can't do everybody's wants and needs. It's just very rarely possible. So there is points at which, you have to balance where revenues does not meet what is required for those expenditure levels. And you have to go back to the expenditure level and, maybe you move some of those expenditures, down the road. Maybe you decide that's not a service, an added value service, and you back that off. There's lots of ways you come to that balancing point. So yes, at one point during this process, we were $2 million short, and that is the basis for which we made the recommendation for the millage rate that we did. And then alongside of that, we also made some difficult, cuts on the expenditure side to come to that point. So there's a lot of things that go into that shortfall or surplus in some cases. We are picking up the increased franchise revenues that were identified, and you will see an increase in that revenue line item in the proposed budget to accommodate that.
Thank you. I want.
Go ahead, council member.
Go ahead, Mr. Clee.
I was going to say, I definitely want to be accurate in my reporting back to constituents, and I'm going to wait to see the actual data. But I do think in the same way that the 6.26% increase can be misconstrued, hearing things like budget shortfall can be alarming to myself and other residents. So if it's just that, and it sounds as if departments are asking for more things, which is fine, because I get that they need more things, but just understanding that, like, we are on target with all of our revenue collection and we don't have a revenue collection problem. We just have steak dreams and hamburger money right now.
Ms. Bembry, are you finished, Ms. Clee? Ms. Bembry, let me just add something. I think you've been very nice. Anytime we're dealing with a budget on the municipalities, the projections for money go up and down based on where we're at. I think you've been very, very nice in not saying that one of the things that happened to us with the influx of the Fulton industrial area, that we lost $3 million. Am I correct on rental for the fire station? Am I correct?
Correct.
All right.
That is, yes.
Yeah. So those are things that, unanticipated things. I think you must also understand that all the revenue that is afforded by the Fulton Industrial Boulevard is not going to happen to us at one time. We're going to experience the bulk of that revenue the following year. So things do go up, Mr. Khalid, here and there. Different when we get in and look at things, we have to make decisions and make transitions. And I know the word shortfall sounds a little bit heavy, but that is the only way that in the finance arena that they explain it. So I think we've done an excellent job. And let me make one other point. The revenues that we have, and which is Ms. Bembry, I think Mr. Khalid makes a point too. We have to be very specific in how we explain to our colleagues the monies that we have and how we have them. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times monies have not been spent as of yet, but they anticipate being spent. All right. So we have to be very careful on how we how we communicated. Lastly, let me say this. I would love to have a rollback. But the simple fact is that you're hearing all about these revenues, but at the end of the day, those revenues are not enough to warrant a rollback. Now, maybe they'll be different next year as we experience some of the money that we haven't experienced now. But as of right now, the revenue does not speak to us in terms of a rollback. So that's my thing. Ms. Willis, you're up.
And Mayor, I think you're being nice. Thank you for recognizing me and saying it, that, you know, over a period of time, we will experience revenue of properties that we have annexed into our city. But right now, those revenues are not going to be realized. They're more of an expense right now, but over time, they will generate in revenue. I, for one, will not be recommending a rollback, because we have had to increase service in those areas that, in some of those areas, we have annexed. And if, you know, individuals that, advocate for rollbacks, maybe we should look at what areas they govern and figure out how we can cut in those areas. I don't want to do that. I think that people are asking for service, and we need to provide the service and service costs. And the purpose of this budget process is not only to look at operation, but to look at capital, the capital budget. Every week I'm getting requests from residents asking me about street being paved or sidewalks, or, you know, wanting additional, street sweepings. That stuff costs. And so, you know, unless residents want less service, then we are going to need to, for right now, capitalize on the revenues as a new city that we are getting in order to provide that level of service that needs to be provided. So, Mayor, you're being nice as well, but I'm just going to keep it quite frank. We have annexed several areas into our city, and right now we are not realizing the revenue, but we're having to provide, and that's okay. We're having to provide the additional resources. Now, my question to Ms. Bembry, being that we have annexed additional properties into our city, do you know when we will realize or see those revenues?
Yes, yes, ma'am, I do. We will see those in our fiscal year 23 budget. So you're absolutely right. In terms of property tax revenues, those are going to be delayed. Because the property, it rests on where the property ownership was on, where the property was on January 1st, regardless of our fiscal year, that is the date that matters. So until the new January 1st rolls around, we will not be able to pick those up on our digest. We have started looking at some preliminary numbers, but the data just isn't strong enough yet in terms of identifying exemption levels and some of those more intricate, complex details of the digest, that we're not ready to really put a number out there yet. But we are looking at those figures for the next fiscal year.
Ms. Bembry, do you know when you will be able to put a number out there? Because I think it will put it in perspective of how much expenses are and how much we are having to provide. It's costing us to provide service until we provide revenues. And it probably would help individuals with their conversation around rollbacks. Maybe they would, you know, speak a little differently if they understood how much we're having to provide. It's costing us to provide service without actually, right at this point, realizing the revenue.
Correct. And you know, some of those numbers we will be able to give more sooner, than other numbers. For example, franchise fee revenues will be fairly easy to pull together. In terms of business license revenue, we do have the group working on that now as well. In that businesses are coming in for their transition license. But to give you kind of an idea of some of the challenges we're facing, you know, we anticipate approximately 900 businesses So far, we've received 100 transition applications. 68 of those were actually complete. So that's an idea of the challenge we're dealing with. Some of the data, it takes time to go through, what those 900 businesses are, if they're actually going to come over as viable businesses. And then, depending on what their gross receipts are, is dependent upon what revenues we see from that. So it's a very layered deal. I will definitely work with my team over the next week and 2 weeks to hone those numbers in better to provide council at least some sort of ballpark figures.
And what's so unfortunate about this, Ms. Bembry, is that we knew that we were going after these territories for years. And so, I'm glad that you're now on the team, but these numbers should have been in play before you got here. This should have been a forecast of what it was going to cost us to provide services and when we are going to realize revenues. And that was not done. It really needs to be done. And I understand what you're saying, but if you could get that information to us as possible, because that matters as it relates to budget, especially when you have individuals who want to put out for political purposes. Let's roll back services. Let's roll back millage rate when they don't understand the true impact of what it's costing to provide a service for areas when we're not right now realizing the revenue. Do you anticipate, and that's my, do you anticipate us having an increase in hotel motel tax, more of an increase? Because we only had one hotel until we recently annexed Fulton Industrial. So the question is, like, for me, how many hotels have we annexed into our city now? What's the revenue around that? Those are type of questions that I have. And it just seems like some of the stuff can come from the tax commissioner's office. Like, what properties that weren't in our city, what are the properties that are now in our city? How much of the tax? Yeah, what's the tax digest? What were they paying? What are they paying now? So.
Correct. And we do have those digest figures and what the assessed value is for that approximate digest. What the tax commissioner did not provide us is any information on potential exemption amounts. Because, of course, there will be local exemption related specifically to the city of South Fulton. So until we go through the data to apply those exemptions, that is going to skew our numbers. And we also are having trouble getting some personal property figures. So we are working through that data, and it's just a lot, and it's very layered.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor?
All right, Dr. Rowell.
Thank you, Mayor, for recognizing me. I just have a couple questions. As it relates to the summary of expenditures ending June 30th, can you speak to the low expenditures under risk management as well as code enforcement? And a follow-up question as it relates to debt service and the interfund transfers, is that the URA? And finally, why are there no figures under the cash balance report for bank account 7193 and 7207, both related to URA?
Okay, so first, let me address the code enforcement budget. That is a new department that we've just started recording expenditures for. So it is low because it is just initiated. You will likely see some expenditures going in there before the end of the year, but not very many. The other area you said was low in regards to risk management. That is likely in regards to those allocations that I mentioned. I mentioned fuel and postage, but another one is workers' comp. We do allocations on the annual bill and it gets dispersed to the various departments. So that is likely what is under there, but I will research that and get more information. And then in regards to debt service and interfund transfers, that too is one of the line items that I was speaking to, that a lot of times those allocations or transfers are not made until the end of the year. But the $1.1 million that you are seeing there under the year-to-date expenditure, I can tell you is the debt service for URA.
Okay.
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 Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
A follow-up question, and I guess that's why it's not segregated yet by funds, but I know there have been discussions about breaking out code enforcement. Wouldn't that also, wouldn't the council also have to deal with the transfer of revenue to pay for personnel, as I'm assuming that's sitting in community development and regulatory affairs, since there's nothing in the budget? Is that correct? And my question is that change happening now, or is it happening with the new fiscal year?
So we will definitely be setting up a full year of expenditure budget for code enforcement in the fiscal year 22 budget. I will talk with management about the desired, or the date of which is desired to initiate that transfer. If it's during the fiscal year 21, yes, a budget amendment would be required at the end of year budget amendment time, that we would reallocate those dollars from community development to code enforcement.
Ms. Bembry and Councilmember Rowell, I would like to say that, yes, right now, we have made the change to remove code enforcement from under CDRA, but we're a few months before the end of this fiscal year. We felt like it was in the city's best interest to go ahead and make that change, but you will see a separate budget for the proposed fiscal year 22 for code enforcement separated out.
Okay, and one follow-up question. I know one of the things we have requested when our budget, will it have the head counts for all of the apartments? I know that's one of the things that we have has been, I actually think it was an ordinance that we passed in terms of the head counts associated with all of this as it's presented with the budget. Will that be included?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. That concludes my questions.
Thank you, Dr. Rowell. Mr. Clerk, do you see anyone else? I don't have him in my queue.
Yes, I have Councilmember Gilliard who wishes to speak.
Okay, Councilmember Gilliard, go right ahead.
My constituents and I are concerned about Fulton Industrial. I get questions, I can't answer them because we don't have any detailed information. We don't have a plan. I don't even know what the budget is. I haven't seen any numbers, whether they are tentative or whatever. There's just no information. So the sooner that we can get some information as it relates to FID, it would really, really be great, because I'm just tired of saying, I don't know.
Councilmember Gilliard, you mind if I address that now?
Yes.
This FIB, it will be a part of the entire fiscal year proposed 2022 budget. We don't separate out quarters or areas of town. We include all of that. So, for example, in the public works budget that you will see, we have equipment included. That's going to be for FIB, but that's also going to be used in other areas of the city. So you won't see specifically a FIB budget, because that's just not how we would do the budget. We're including anything related to operations of operations of FIB in our budget for fiscal year 22. So that's why you have not seen anything separated out. But if you'll just give us a chance to present you and the council with the full budget, we'll be glad to address any questions specifically that you may have as it relates to the operations of that particular corridor.
Now, my response to that is that FID was a big undertaking, and it is going to have a major impact on our budget. And in addition to that, there has to be a plan associated with it because, yes, there are some similarities in terms of some of the services that are provided, but there has to be a plan for how we're going to deal with it. Whatever it is that what's going to be transferred from Fulton County, what's not going to be transferred. And so if for me, and maybe not for my constituents, maybe I can just tell them it's going to be a part of it, but having no information going to, let's merge it with information that we already have, to me really says, well, I really don't know what came over, what didn't come over. And to me, that is the most logical way to do it before you merge it. So I still would like to know what is our plan. It is a major undertaking. It is the reduction of revenue. And I heard the mayor say it was $3 million because of the revenue we're going to lose from fire service. But somewhere in one of our documents, I saw it was 7. Then how much money does Fulton County owe us? And are they going to pay us or are they not going to pay us? Are they going to transfer totally over to us in 2022, 2023? There's a lot of questions that I have.
I think she has answered some of those questions from Ms. Bembry. I think the answer, but I think the clear answer here is that when we do budgets, we don't do them by districts.
I understand that. I totally understand that. And what I'm still saying is that it is a major undertaking with a lot of moving parts. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, ma'am.
So,
And
because of that, I would just like to see, what did we inherit, period, before it gets transferred into the big pot. I don't think that's too much to ask for.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. All right. Anyone else? I'm sorry, Ms. Gilliard, you finished? I didn't want to.
Yes, I'm finished.
Okay. Mr. Adams, anyone else? I
did not see anyone with their hands raised. No.
Next item, please.
Yes, and actually, Mr. Mayor and Council, before we move on, I just wanted to reiterate that the millage rate hearings are tomorrow, and the opportunity for the public to provide public comment is still available through the city's website. The public comment button is still active, and the form is active. Just wanted to make that point.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
Mayor, one of these meeting invites going out, because I'm looking at my calendar and I don't have one meeting invite for the public hearings or for these budget hearings.
Ms. Jones, will you answer that before we go on?
We will make sure we get those out to you, but I did send out a memo to the council with the dates for the millage rate public hearing. And then when we finalize the dates for the public hearing for the budget, we will send those out to you. We have not submitted that information to you, but my memo included the millage rate public hearing dates and the dates that the staff were going to be presenting to the council. I can resend that out if I need to.
Okay, thank you.
And I would like to add, Mayor Pro Tem Willis, the Zoom invitation for the millage rate hearings went out this morning, and the Zoom invitation for the Department Public Hearings, now that we have them, will go out no later than tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Clerk, next report, please.
Next report is City Attorney's monthly report. Vincent Hyman, City Attorney.
Hyman.
I just have a brief update for executive session if we have it.
Okay, now if we don't,
and it'd be real estate related for
Mayor, I would like to have a conversation around real estate and litigation concerning the police precincts in Districts 2 and District 7.
Are you okay?
And I'd like to add to that.
Okay, so we're talking about executive session items, right?
Yes, real estate and litigation.
So Ms. Hyman, we'll hold you to executive session. Next report, please.
Next report is the city manager's monthly report. Tammi Sadler-Jones, city manager. Ms. Sadler-Jones?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, user error. I didn't unmute myself. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Good afternoon again to everyone. Ms. Rachel Bembry has already shared with you the fiscal year 2022 budget information. Again, just want to remind the public that we have our department presentations that are going to be presented to the council. That's scheduled for Tuesday, August the 17th at 10 a.m. and Thursday, August the 19th at 10 a.m. And those meetings are going to be held virtually. I do want to make sure that the council knows that in the presentation information that we will be presenting to you via email on Friday, we will have a proposed budget for capital improvement projects. And of course, those projects are, included to enhance the equipment and resources available to our city departments. The second thing I wanted to do was introduce and mention that our new Parks and Recreation Director, Travis Landrum, started with us on yesterday. Travis has over 21 years of experience and executive level of experience in Parks and Recreation. He's worked at 2 Metro Atlanta area cities as the director and also as a deputy director. And I'm excited to have him on our team. We had planned to try to do something where we could do a meet and greet specifically for the staff and the council members. We kind of didn't realize we were double booking ourselves, but we will try to see if we can proceed with having that, and we will send an invite to the council. But that meet and greet is for the employees in the Parks and Recreation Department and for the mayor and council to come by and meet Mr. Landrum. So thank you, Travis, and welcome to our team. I wanted to mention to you that school zone enhancements are in progress. We know how important safety is to the mayor and the council and to myself, and we are in the process of working with our vendor to add additional colors, red and yellow colors on the ground in our school zones. And also I know that our public works team, they have tried to make sure that we are following the manual on uniform traffic control devices guidelines as it relates to school zones. Specifically, our school zones have to have either flashing lights or the times. Those are options. Right now, all of our school zones have the flashing lights. And I want to remind the public that when lights are flashing, the speed limit is 25 miles per hour. Drivers must adhere to the posted speed limit in each school zone when the lights are not flashing. And so I want to make sure that the council knows that we are trying to do our very best to meet your expectations regarding the school zones. Our staff is working with the city clerk's office, our programs and performance, communications and IT also are working to map out the process to add public comments to our website, and also to make sure we have a way to follow up when the public does make comments, looking at the best options. So we will continue to update you on that process. Transparency and public input is very important to our city. And so we are going to try to do our very best to make sure that the public has access to that information. The COVID-19, the council just did a mask mandate. And so, our staff, our HR director, our human resources director, and our risk manager are working with me to continue monitoring the increase in COVID-19 cases throughout our region and specifically in our state and in our area. We are, looking at the best options and ways to mitigate the spread of the virus in the workplace. So I do want you to know that we are, looking at putting a plan in place, because it's important to me that we be proactive rather than being reactive. And so I will be submitting some information to you all. I know another, Fulton County did some things today, and so we may be following suit on some things that they're doing, as well as what some other municipalities are doing. I do want to stress that, it is important for us to abide by HIPAA laws and regulations. So, when we have situations within our city, we have to, make sure that we are following privacy guidelines in regards to, COVID-19 or any, kind of health issues. The other thing I wanted to bring to your attention.
What happened?
Zoom.
What?
Muted herself, please.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. It seems like my hand is rubbing across my computer here. Let me move over. I wanted to make clear the American Rescue Fund money. The council is aware that we have received our first allocation, 5.6 million. We got that on May the 21st. We received the second allocation May of 2022. I did attend the GMA, the Georgia Municipal Association Conference, and there was a presentation for city managers on the American Rescue Plan money. And I do want to stress, this particular funding is very different from CARES funding. And so what was stressed to the managers at GMA was for us to be thoughtful and strategic in regards to the projects that we are planning or would recommend that we use this money for. One thing that I do want to stress is, right now, the U.S. Department of Treasury only has provided to us preliminary guidelines. The final guidelines are not expected to be received or sent out to cities or municipalities until late August or September. So, what we learned and what I learned at GMA was that they would recommend that cities not make commitments or finalize spending plans until we receive the final U.S. Treasury guidelines. So again, as soon as I get those guidelines, I will be making a recommendation to the council. But we do have until December of 2024 to obligate the funds, and we have until December of 2026 to spend the funds. So it's important that, my office and, that we plan. And so that would be, my recommendation to the council, that you please be very patient with us. We are doing our very best to put together a comprehensive proposed project list, but I do need to wait until I receive the guidelines on how to properly use the American Rescue Plan money. And the last thing I wanted to mention was we met with our broker for our health insurance. And so I wanted to yield a little bit of my time to Ms. Nikki Graham, our HR director, so she can give you an update on our health insurance costs and the plans that we are going to be recommending as we approach our open enrollment season, which starts October 1st. But before I do that, I just want to thank all of our city employees for the great work that they do. And, we appreciate you. I say all the time, we have a thankless job, but whenever I get an opportunity, I try my very best to let the staff know that I really, truly thank them for the work that they do. So at this time, Ms. Graham, I'll turn it over to you to share with the council information about our health insurance plan. Thank you.
And thank you, City Manager. I appreciate that. Greetings, Mayor and Council. How's everyone today? I want to thank everyone for allowing me to present to everyone the renewal plans for benefits for this coming fiscal year 21-22, which will take effect October 1st, 2021. First, let me start by saying we have two providers, Blue Cross Blue Shield Anthem, and Kaiser, and the plan details will not change. We were able to secure a 0% renewal on Kaiser, and the rate/cost will remain the same for employee-employer. Blue Cross Blue Shield Anthem has two plans. The high deductible HSA plan will receive a -4% renewal, which means rates decreased for the employer and stayed the same for the employee. The PPO plan under Blue Cross Blue Shield Anthem had a single-digit renewal from 15% to a single-digit renewal and had a slight increase for employee-employer. In addition to the benefits plans, this year we are adding short-term disability for the employees at no cost versus having long-term disability. Our life insurance coverage will increase from 50,000 to 100,000 K for our employees. And that is it. That's final for the benefit renewals. As I said, the plan details will not change. And lastly, before I end the discussion and ask for any questions, I just want to let the public know the city is hiring, and we encourage and welcome everyone to visit our website at cityofsouthfultonga.gov under employment and apply to any positions you feel welcome to. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. Mr. Khalid and then Ms. Willis. Mr. Khalid, you're on.
Thank you. I'm sorry. There were so many things. That was a packed presentation. First, I would just like to either correct or inquire. I know, Madam City Manager, you said that when the lights that are flashing are off, the speed limit increases to the white posted speed limit. But I do believe that 1 hour before and 1 hour after those lights are flashing, or dawn to dusk or something like that, that lower speed limit is still in place. And I know that we talked about putting times on that, but I just wanted people to be aware of that. If it's daylight out and you're in a school zone, you may just want to go at that lower speed because we may still be clocking people at that speed.
I think you're right, Mr. Khalid. I think this is what she said. I think you corrected it.
Yeah.
Did I misspeak on? I said when the lights are flashing, the speed limit is 25 miles per hour.
Right. So there's times before and after that. Usually it's like during daylight hours. It's something like between dawn and dusk.
Right. I think it's 1 hour before school starts and then 1 hour after school ends.
That's correct.
Okay.
I just didn't want people to see the sign, think that they could go a little faster and then get a ticket.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we would encourage people when they're in the school zone, I would just go the school zone miles per hour.
We thank you for that correction, Mr. Khalid.
Thank you. And then you talked specifically about the ARP guidelines, because I've gone to a couple classes and heard that same thing, that they would be coming out in August.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first let me ask, is it safe to assume then that the budget presentations that we will see in August will not include those expenditures? Like that will be taken out?
That will be presented separately, but there may be areas in our budget, for example, stormwater. We're making a recommendation that we use some of our ARP money to address stormwater issues. You'll see that noted in the budget, that is a funding option for that particular capital project.
Awesome. And then for when that guidance does come out, in addition to the recommendations, can we get that guidance as well? I know it'll be a very big document, but could we get that as well?
Absolutely. As soon as I get it, I will send it to the council. And of course, I'll be continuing to rely upon GMA and NLC for information on when those guidelines are finalized.
Okay. And then Ms. Graham, thank you so much for your excellent negotiation of our rates. I'm wondering, do you know for those people with Blue Cross Blue Shield, do we have a handle on how many people those are and what the cost would be if you said it was like a 1% increase or a minimal increase, what it would cost the city to just absorb that increase?
Okay, so it was a single digit increase. So we got it down from 15% to 9.8%. And if the city was to even, I did try to absorb part of that or even take the city share up a little bit more, and it would have cost us over 100,000. I don't know the exact figure, but I can get back to you if you like, but it would cost over 100,000 for me to increase it to a 80-20 is what I was looking at. So it was quite high.
Thank you. I would love to see those figures, and as well, just what percentages of our staff is on those plans, because I know that people choose those plans for very particular reasons, and I don't want to put any bigger burden in this like COVID era, and then we have to. And then that just brings me to my last comment, like to the both of you. This is something that I've talked about a lot, but I do hope that as we're looking at different tools to keep our staff and our visitors safe, I hope that we don't take off the table this possible allowing people to telework again and being as flexible with that as possible. I do know that sheltering in place was the most effective way to stop the spread of this virus in 2019 and 2020, and those people that did that the most aggressively have gotten the most efficacious results from it. And so I know that school is starting, and we may see an increase if trends in more rural counties that started school a little bit earlier. If we see those same trends here, that there may be these closures of grades or schools, and that people may end up having to be at home anyway. And so just in preparation of all of that, I hope that is not an arrow that we've taken out of the quiver of possible solutions.
All right, Mr. Khalid, Ms. Willis, and we'll close from there.
Yes, I just have one question. Ms. Sally Jones, did you say that we can't have flashing lights and signage saying the times that the lights are flashing?
Based upon my understanding, and Mr. Valenzuela, if you're on, because this is more of your lane, so to speak, based upon the MUTCD guidelines, what we currently are doing is the recommended guideline, and that is to either have a sign that says when flashing, or it can have a time on there, which was similar to the example that you had sent to me. But Mr. Valenzuela, are you on?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Valenzuela, are you saying that there is a rule when I see other municipalities having the lights flashing and the times on the signs? I see this in other municipalities. Are you saying this is something the city of South Fulton can't do?
Ma'am, what I'm saying is exactly what MUTCD guidelines mandates for sign installations throughout the country. For those installations, I can forward to you or to the body the code and what mandates it. It states that at school zones, you can have the flashing and have right below the speed limit and say when flashing, or the timing, or it has different things. You can't not put the timing and add the word when flashing. So all our school signs are properly marked and posted and are in accordance of the guidelines.
So this is the problem I have, Ms. Sally Jones, because this is my legislation, and I'm about tired of this council getting beat up over this mess. What our residents are consistently asking for is they need to know what time the lights are going to be flashing. So if you have to remove when lights are flashing off of the sign and put this exact time that I sent you several examples of that. And Corey Reeves and I have both been talking to you about that. Plus the striping in these school zones, I'm going to be transparent and I'm going to go on record and I hope that the residents are listening. Is garbage. You could barely see who would put just school. I mean, who doesn't know the schools are in school zones? Everybody know a school is in a school zone. So why would you just paint school? I mean, come on now.
Well, what I was saying earlier, Councilmember Willis, we have school. We're going to add the word zone, and we're going to add the red stripe and a yellow stripe. What Mr. Valenzuela shared with me as information was on the sign, you can either have when flashing, a sign that says when flashing, or a sign that says the times. So that's the guidelines based upon the Uniform Traffic Control Devices guidelines, and we can send those out to you. That was new education to me.
I am not disputing the guidelines. What I'm saying is that what we are consistently hearing from our residents, it seems like nobody is listening to our residents. What we're hearing from our residents is they want clear direction on what time the lights are going to be flashing. What most municipalities are doing, they don't have, they have the light flashing, they have the school zone, and then they have the times, the blocks. The examples that I sent you, that didn't come from, I didn't pull that, out the wind. I got that from another municipality.
Yes, ma'am. And so what that municipality used was the guideline that Mr. Valenzuela is making reference to. So if the council is telling me that you...
Ms. Sally Jones, we have 4 minutes before our next meeting.
Okay, but let me say this. We do not have that. What we have is what's not working. What we have is people slow down 25 miles when lights are flashing. What residents are consistently asking for, what time are the lights flashing? Why can't we just do what other municipalities are doing and put the times at the bottom? And if you got to get rid of when lights are flashing, get rid of it, because obviously that's not working. And
the
stripings, it should have been fixed. The council was presented one thing. The council was told that they were going to do one thing, and then something totally different was done.
I think there's a simple solution, Miss Wills. I think you hit it on the head. I think Miss Jones, do you understand it?
Yes, sir, I do, and that's what I agree with her. We need to, if the council wants the times taken off, we can take those.
We got it.
Okay, all right.
Now, Mr. Reed's time is leaving us. If you would allow me to, I want to close this meeting because we do have another meeting at 6 o'clock.
I was going to say I move to adjourn.
Okay. All right. Is there a second?
Second.
If y'all would allow me to, why don't we just hold this executive session to after our next meeting? Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. All right. The properly moved the second in discussion. Hearing none. Let's vote, please.
Roll call vote to adjourn. Councilmember Rowell.
Yes.
Councilmember Gums.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Willis.
Yes.
Councilmember Gilliard. Councilmember Reeves.
Aye.
Councilmember Khalid. Councilmember Baker.
Aye.
Councilmember Khalid, was that a yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We are adjourned at 5:58 p.m.
Okay, I'm going to call to order the public hearing, zoning public hearing, Tuesday, August 10th, 2021 at 6 p.m. Mr. Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, roll call. The Honorable William Bill Edwards, Mayor.
Here.
The Honorable Catherine F. Rowell, District 1.
Present.
The Honorable Carmelita Gums, District 2.
Present.
The Honorable Helen Z. Willis, District 3.
Present.
The Honorable Naima Gilliard, District 4.
Present.
The Honorable Corey A. Reeves, District 5.
Accounted for.
The Honorable Councilmember Khalid, District 6.
Present.
and the Honorable Mark Baker, District 7.
Present.
Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Okay, Mr. Clerk, would you announce the first agenda item, please, for public hearing?
The first agenda item is Z21-006 and CV21-007. Council to consider a rezoning with concurrent variance at 0 Oakley Road for the purpose of constructing a townhome community. This is located in District 7.
Staff?
Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, members of council, the petitioners have withdrawn this first case and they will not be proceeding with it. So if there are no objections, we could go right to the next one.
No, we have to vote on that. I'm gonna close the public hearing on it. Is there a motion to accept that? Hello?
I move that we accept the
I mean, we
withdrawal
don't,
of
this
the
is,
petition.
we don't vote. We're hearing, we just hear.
Oh, this is a
cases
hearing.
today.
Thank you. I'm sorry. You're absolutely correct. You're right, Ms. Willis. We don't vote. Okay, then go to the next one.
Next item, number 2, Z21-009. Council to consider a rezoning at 7445 Old National Highway for the purpose of constructing a mixed-use townhome and retail development. This is located in District 7.
Staff, go ahead.
Thank you very much. We can go right to the next slide, please. I hear the petitioners requesting rezoning from C1 to mixed use for, as was stated, the purpose of developing a townhome community with a commercial parcel that is fronting Old National. The proposal is for 68 townhomes with a commercial out parcel in front. The commercial component does not yet have a proposed use or specific building design, but there are some renderings that they have submitted as examples. The petition is proposing a walking trail on a property. It joins adjacent to this development for an amenity for this proposal. All the guidelines are in line with the future land use map. Staff recommendations for approval. And if we go to the next slide, the Planning Commission did recommend denial at their meeting on July 20th. We can go to the next slide, please. The parcel in question is directly in the middle of your screen. You see a pin drop for Jackson's Music Store, and the parcels are the wooded lots that surround that parcels between West Road, Old National, and Old National Way. So it's sort of a U-shaped combination of several parcels there, right in the center. We can go to the next slide. On the left is the future land use map. On the right is the zoning map. You will see a parcel outlined in blue. This proposal is for that parcel and the 3 parcels immediately below it. The parcel that is touching on the right-hand side is the Jackson's Music Store parcel. That shop is already there. And so these 1, 2, 3, 4 parcels would be surrounding that building that's already there. But this shows the current zoning on the right and the future land use on the left, showing it is in compliance with our current regulations. We can go to the next slide, please. This is an engineered drawing of the site that was submitted, and I just wanted to show you the lot divisions. We can go right to the next slide, and that will show a rendered site plan of what they're proposing. You see all the townhomes on the parcel. You see the main and only entrance will be from Old National Way, and so that will be where the daily traffic comes in and out. There will be no traffic into these townhomes from West Road. So all traffic going into the townhomes will come from Old National and Old National Way. You see in the front, there is the out parcel, the commercial out parcel. This building will share the existing entrance to the Jackson's Music Store. So again, there will be very limited access or very limited traffic rather to this parcel from West Road. There is a proposed entrance on West Road that was requested by fire to get better access, but that would not be the main entrance to the commercial, and there would not be direct access to the residential from it. There would be a knockbox and a gate so that traffic to the townhomes would not come from the residential street West Road. We can go to the next slide, please. This shows the proposed walking trail. The petitioners here own the parcel that borders Jonesboro Road. Is really unbuildable except for as green space, and they're proposing to use it as the amenity area for this development. We can go to the next slide, please. This is a sample of what could be built on the commercial parcel, just showing that it is possible to put a multi-parcel building or a multi-unit building on that parcel rather. There is not a tenant identified for that site just yet. We can go to the next slide. The next few slides are proposed renderings of the townhomes that have been sent in. They just show a modern farmhouse feel, which is a pretty common architectural design you see currently. So we can just scan through these pictures. Here's a picture of the entrance marquee feature. Here's some renderings of the townhomes. Again, I want to stress there's a 2-car garage on each townhome and 2 parking spaces for each townhome for additional guest parking there. And on the overall site plan, there was additional spaces for guest parking as well. I'm not sure if there's a slide directly after this with more renderings. No, that was the last one on that. And that is the end of the staff presentation on that rezoning case.
Yeah, I'll open the public hearing. Is the petitioner there?
Yes, Mr. Martin is available.
Petitioner?
Mayor Edwards, members of the City Council, my name is Dwayne Martin. I'm the attorney for the applicant Executive Real Estate, LLC. Thank you for the opportunity to make this presentation to you. City zoning and planning staff has outlined the pertinent details of the rezoning application. I'll just restate a couple of points. Number one, it is important to note that we did receive a staff recommendation for approval, and this application is consistent and in compliance with the future land use map for the city of South Fulton. Our client has worked over the past 4 months with city staff, refining the proposal to address zoning code requirements, learning a lot from the staff about this process and ensuring that the development meets all of the applicable codes and regulations. We've conducted the required public meetings, community zoning information meeting, and we held our own Zoom virtual meeting for the community to provide their feedback. I have personally spoken with the abutting property owner, Jackson Music, and after the Planning Commission meeting a few weeks ago, my client met with the owner of Jackson Music, who had expressed some concerns about the development. There were some specific items outlined at the Planning Commission meeting, and we responded to the objections that were raised at the Planning Commission meeting in a letter to the mayor and to the city council last week. I would highlight a couple. Number one, there was a statement that was made that we do not meet the density requirements. As city staff has already outlined to the council today, we do meet those requirements. We are far under the acreage per unit required under the zoning code. And our active trail and other elements in the property and the development provide for a very useful and attractive development for the community. We've taken great care to address the issues or concerns by residents on West Road, and staff has already outlined the fact that this development will not encroach on or negatively affect West Road. And so we hope that the staff's recommendation will be approved by this commission. We recognize that we have to attend the city council meeting on the 24th, and we are happy to answer any questions that the mayor or the city council may have about our application. Thank you.
Anyone here for this application?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, we did receive one comment in opposition.
No, anything for I'm asking for right now besides Mr. Martin.
Yes, no one submitted any comments in support of the application.
Okay, in opposition. Go ahead with the opposition.
Okay, we received one comment in opposition to the application. The comment was received from Mr. Michael Venable, who lives on Montilly Circle in District 6. He states, Z21009 against the rezoning to MIX is unnecessary and inappropriate. The commercial piece zone C1 is part of an undeveloped small retail plaza. As seen by the curb cut, the zoning is intended to be consistent with the developed C1 section. By changing the zoning to MIX, you essentially compromise the consistency of the entire plaza. If the development intent presented is sincere, nothing is prohibiting the development of the C1 parcel per the applicant's vision by leaving the zoning as is. Because it is a completion of a commercial strip, the building should strongly match the existing building due to the size of the lot and proposed building. A curb cut on West Road is completely unnecessary and adds stress to the West Road community as no traffic signal is in place. As for the residential component, the density shown is a gross violation of the land use plan density requirement. Not only does the proposal exceed the maximum of 5 units per acre, the proposal is inconsistent with the surrounding housing, which is 3 units per acre or less. An attempt to use undevelopable wetlands to substantiate density is improper since the land remains R3. The setbacks are not staggered, and even the drawings show on-site parking blocks the sidewalks. The drawings lack sufficient masonry siding. There is no active amenity package, clubhouse with kitchen and bathroom facilities and sufficient square footage to accommodate association business meetings. The proposal is not sustainable as the project can easily revert to uncontrolled rental or investment property. The commercial property has absolutely nothing to do with the residential component as there is no interparcel connectivity, which there should not be. Rezoning to MIX changes the existing commercial units to MIX by default. There are way too many road zoning on Old National Corridor already. Any appropriate development on the commercial piece can be achieved without rezoning. The residential component violates the land use plan and lacks the components to remain viable and blend with the surrounding housing, both on the Fulton County and the Fayette County sides. End of comment.
Okay, I'm gonna close public hearing. Mr. Clerk, you're gonna have to help me. I don't think that the queue is working. Who are you seeing?
I do not see anyone in the queue, and
Whose hands up?
yeah, I'm receiving a note that Novus is not working. I do not see anyone with their Councilmember Rowell has her hand raised.
Dr. Rowell, go ahead.
Couple quick questions about this. Would the commercial be built concurrently with the townhomes? I know I heard that there is not a tenant projected. I'm just concerned about the commercial not coming and the townhomes being built. And my follow-up question is, are these townhomes for sale?
No, they're rental.
Ms. Gilliard, you need to mute yourself. Ms. Gilliard, will you mute yourself?
Mm-hmm. As soon as I can get it to there.
Okay.
Can somebody answer those questions or confirm?
Mr. Martin, no questions for you.
Yes, Councilman Burrell. These units, first of all, are for sale, fee simple. These are not rental units. And that issue was addressed in our letter to the council members and the mayor sent earlier this week. Secondly, also in that letter in response to Mr. Venable's comments today are essentially the same comments he made at the Planning Commission meeting. The commercial piece is essentially commercial, and the developer has extensive experience in retail leasing and development. We're confident that these spaces, or the concern that these commercial spaces may lay vacant, is a misplaced one, given the viability of the current rental market, the improvement in the economy over the past 6 months or so, and given the experience of the developer in leasing up comparable and larger commercial units similar to this one.
Okay. All right. Dr. Rowell,
when you're talking about leasing, you're talking about the commercial, because you did say that these are for sale, correct? Okay, I just want to be clear.
Yes, Councilmember, that is correct. Thank you.
Dr. Rowell, okay, thank you. Councilwoman Gumbs.
Good afternoon. I have just 2 quick questions because I actually have a location in my district that is pretty much similar With the townhomes, is there any way that the driveways can be longer? And the reason why I say that is because in some of these mixed-use developments where they have the subdivisions of townhomes, some of that commercial traffic sometimes spills onto, I guess, in their area. So just wondering if there's a way that the driveways could be a little bit longer, because sometimes the cars are hanging out, and based off of the renderings, it looks like those driveways are pretty short.
Councilmember Gumbs, I'll make two comments. First of all, the rendering is not drawn to scale. So to the extent that the public comment makes the assertion, that the setbacks are staggered or not staggered, or that automobiles are blocking driveways, it's just not correct. Staff may speak specifically to that, but the driveways actually accommodate 2 automobiles. So they are 20 feet in length. So they are relatively long. To the extent that the city would like to see longer driveways, that's a technical issue. I do have the developer on with me today, and we may speak specifically to that particular question if you desire.
Okay, so I'm just actually bringing it up to that attention because, again, that's something that we are experiencing in our particular area. And one of the other questions too is, gosh, I'm having a senior moment. Oh gosh, it was so important. Oh, is this a private? Will this be a private subdivision? Is it planned for a private subdivision?
Well, it will not be gated. It will have an open entrance, so it will not be gated or key accessed. So if you mean in terms of that, or access to the community, no.
Okay, so as far as the plat, because that's, again, we don't have a gated community with the townhomes and the commercial, but it's also considered a private subdivision, meaning that the streets belong to the developer. Now, is this one different and platted for something other than that? Is what I'm trying to get clarity on.
Yes, this development will have an HOA that will be responsible for the common areas, but it will be a public street.
Okay.
All right. Let me just say a few things.
Mr. Mayor, when you're clear, can you add me to your queue, please?
I'm sorry. Why don't you go ahead right now?
Well,
Dr. Bick, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was actually done, but
excuse me, Dr. Baker, you were not finished, Councilwoman Gomes?
no, I was not, and it's just one other.
Sorry.
So with the Attorney Martin, with the driveways, you said it is stipulated for how much? 20 feet?
Actually, it's 32 feet, Councilwoman Gumbs.
The driveway is 32 feet?
Yeah, from the back curb to the front of the building.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, I'll recognize Dr. Baker now.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to ask a question in reference to those common areas. Is there any plans to build any type of clubhouse or meeting area for these residents?
Councilmember Baker, there isn't a present plan to build a clubhouse. In our conversations with city zoning and planning staff, a development of this size normally does not include that type of active amenity. And so there isn't a plan for that at the present moment, no.
Okay, I would like to just note that would be a welcome concession given, some of the conversations I've heard from the nearby residents, because their concerns of where they're going to meet. I know that West Road community already meets at the fire station, South Fulton's fire station, but that was one of the concerns, of course, of Mr. Venables as well. But I yield, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Dr. Baker, thank you very much. Let me just say a couple of things, and you all have made a lot of great points. Old National, it's got to be a part of a vibrant revitalization. And here's where I have a problem. Staff, you've heard me say time and time again that I don't like Audubons. And which means that in these particular issues that we need to create some kind of traffic calming inside the existing communities. That's one. And I hope you understand that, because this is my third time saying it. The other thing is simply this. For a long time, I made the comments, I don't like lines on a sheet of paper. And I said to you, let's make sure that they give us renderings. The rendering I just saw of the commercial area was nothing less than a disgrace. I don't know where it came from or how it was there, but it was a disgrace. They even put that on the screen. And then thirdly, or fourthly, whichever I'm on, I'm not a proponent of one way in and one way out. Never have been, and I ain't starting today. Because one way in and one way out, I don't care what they say about, I'm gonna have a way in for the ambulance, for the fire trucks. It is just not a good deal. All right. I hope that as we go forward, that our staff embraces the idea that you as council people continuously have to talk about. And it seems like every time and staff goes in to talk with developers, you know that there's certain things that we like to have and we like to see before you bring it to us. And I would say to you, I don't see this right now. The vision for Old National, how does it fit into that vision for Old National Highway? So I guess my comments is more toward you, staff, in terms of preparing people to come before this body to have a conversation. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Mr. Clerk?
Yes, that completes that item. Item 3 is an ordinance to amend Title 5, Zoning and Planning, Chapter 2, Subdivision Regulations, and Appendix C, Zoning, Article 8, Procedures and Permits, Section 807, Certificate of Occupancy of the Code of Ordinances, City of South Fulton, GA, to regulate the leasing or rental of newly developed single-family residential homes and for other lawful purposes. This is sponsored by Councilmember Rowell. And prior to staff addressing this issue, I would like to note that this item has received some revision, and I believe the city attorney's office can speak to the revisions.
Is the revision a part of the document now before us? Mr. Hyman?
It should be,
yes,
Mr. Mayor.
Okay, go ahead. I just make sure you have nothing else. Go ahead.
Okay.
The only revision was just actually to kind of make it more clear that a single family residential dwelling can be attached or detached. And that's really what the revision was, to give it broad application, but it's just really single family residential attached and detached, which would cover your traditional single family residential homes as well as townhomes, multiplex, duplex, and things of that nature.
Okay. Any comment? I see Councilwoman Willis's hand.
This is a public hearing.
So, yes, Mayor.
It's a public
This is
hearing.
an ordinance. When did we start doing public hearings?
Excuse me, Miss.
Oh.
All right. I have to open the public hearing.
Okay.
Okay, Miss.
Well, I hold my questions until after the public hearings, Mayor.
Till I close. Thank you so much.
Okay.
The public hearing is open.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, we did not receive any comments in support or in opposition to this item. And just to Mayor Pro Tem, we had this on the last regular agenda, and it was noted that it needed to have a public hearing prior to being properly placed on the council meeting for action.
Okay.
Mr. Clerk, if you want, I could comment on that specific item. The difference here with this part of the proposal that's being made, and if you wouldn't mind flipping to the next slide, I think that would give a little bit of clarity. So there are several things that are being changed in regard to the rental subdivisions and rental townhomes. Some of those are in the city's Code of Ordinances. Well, one part of the Code of Ordinances is the zoning ordinance itself. And so when you're making changes to the zoning ordinance, no matter what the topic may be, you have to have a public hearing for it. You do not have to have public hearings for changes to the Code of Ordinances, but if any changes are made to the zoning ordinance specifically, we do need to have a public hearing for that. And so the text in the middle of the screen here, section 80701, we're going to add no developer or builder, and the text that follows, and I believe that was some of the language has changed, but because this part of the zoning ordinance itself is changing, is why we have to have the public hearing for it.
So are you saying that we are in compliance with by doing this public hearing today?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you change any word on what you just showed me here?
We are allowed to make changes within the public hearings, but the attorney, that was the topic that was just brought up between the clerk and the attorney, that there may have been some language change here. Is
there any language change that you just read to this document?
None that I read, but I didn't read this whole phrase. But
that's all I want to know. Okay, thank you very much. I'm gonna close the public hearing. I saw Miss Willis' hand up on the machine here, so I'll start with her.
So my question is, are we prohibiting developers from building townhomes or affordable housing projects in the city of South Fulton? And here's why I ask. We currently have some affordable housing, workforce housing, and townhome properties. And I'm not against them but I do think they need to be they need to be throughout the city. It needs to be equitable. And I'm saying that because one of my, Mayor, you know this, apartments had a fire, and they had the hardest time placing those individuals. And these kids, it was like 40 kids, 20 adults. And these kids feed into Seaborn Lee, Camp Creek Middle School, and Westlake. Now, they're not going to be able to repair that housing unit anytime soon. So now what we're doing is disenfranchising our residents, because if they can't find any place in the city of South Fulton to live, they're going to have to go wherever they can find a place to live. And so my concern is, yes, I do think that we need to stop developers or mandate developers or put some kind of limitation on developers coming into our subdivisions, buying up or creating building things that's not in alignment with the current code or the current quality of life that's there. But what I don't want to do is prohibit developers from bringing quality workforce housing or affordable housing throughout the city of South Fulton. So please explain, what are we doing here? Whether it's, let me hear from planning first, and then Councilwoman Rowell, since this is your ordinance, Mayor, if you don't mind, I would like to yield over to Councilwoman Rowell.
Well, thank you for orchestrating that. Councilwoman Rowell.
Do you want to hear from?
I said I wanted to hear from planning first. That's why I asked you, Mayor. I said, Mayor.
I'm sorry. Let me make sure we're right.
If you don't mind.
Sure. And in full disclosure, this ordinance was written by the city attorneys. So I'm not trying to pass the buck, but it was given to us to run through the ordinance amendment system here. But the intent here is to simply limit the construction of rental communities, and specifically single-family detached or attached. So the only thing that would be effectively banned are building entire townhome communities or entire subdivisions that would be rented.
Okay. Ms. Rowell,
You said entire.
Yes, he is.
You said entire subdivisions. What did you say before that? Because he cut out. You said entire subdivisions that will be rented, and what else?
Or large townhome communities.
And so when you say large, like, what do you mean? You saying, like, for example, I have one that's coming on Yates Road. That's not a large community, but it is a townhome community. So you said some.
Right. So that one on Yates Road is actually a good
like
example.
that will be prohibited.
I'm sorry you cut out and I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that one on Yates Road is a good example. That is a multifamily project, so it would not be affected by this. This would just ban single family rental communities, like I said, townhome communities or single family homes.
Correct. And Councilwoman Willis, this wouldn't prevent the approval traditional apartment complex. Like that doesn't affect this at all, this particular ordinance.
right.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? Mr. Clerk, next item.
Next item is executive session.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we go into executive session for real estate litigation, and I'll go ahead and put personnel so we won't violate anything if anything regarding personnel needs to come up.
Okay. There's a second. Hello.
Second.
Properly moved and second, Mr. Clerk.
It's a roll call vote. Councilmember Rowell,
Yes.
Councilmember Gomes,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Willis,
Yes.
Councilmember Gilliard,
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves,
Aye.
Councilmember Khalid,
Mr. Khalid. Go ahead, Mr. Clerk.
Councilmember Baker.
Okay.
That item is approved. We are adjourned, recessed for executive session at 6:32.
All right.